There was a man who spent the first 40 years of his life believing he was ordinary. He dropped out of school at a young age, drifted from job to job, and carried with him a quiet but crushing sense that success was reserved for other people. Smarter people, luckier people, people born into the right families. His name was Bob Proctor, and by every external measure, the world had already made its verdict on him. Then one day, someone handed him a book, a worn, unassuming book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He didn't read it once. He didn't read it twice. He read it every single day. He carried it with him. He marked its pages. He spoke its ideas aloud. He absorbed its principles the way roots absorb rain, slowly, deeply, irreversibly. Within a year, his income went from $6,000 to $175,000. Not because the world had changed, not because his circumstances had handed him anything new, but because he had changed from the inside out. What Bob Proctor discovered in that process wasn't luck, and it wasn't magic. It was a method. A specific, deliberate, and profoundly underestimated method of changing the human mind through the repeated exposure to an idea, until that idea becomes not just something you think, but something you are. That method is what this video is about. Not repetition in the shallow sense of saying an affirmation and hoping for the best, but repetition as a neurological, psychological, and spiritual force, the kind that rewrites your internal blueprint and opens the door to a life you once thought impossible. Stay wheat. It may be the most important thing you ever hear. Welcome. If you have found your way to this video, it is not by accident. There is something within you, a deeper intelligence that some call intuition and others call the higher self, that already knows there is more available to you than what your current life reflects. You may not be able to fully articulate it yet, but it is there. And what you are about to explore in the next several minutes has the power to give that, knowing a name, a structure, and a path forward. Bob Proctor dedicated over 6 decades of his life to one fundamental question. Why do some people succeed wildly, while others equally talented, equally intelligent, remain stuck? The answer, he discovered, is not found in talent, education, timing, or even hard work alone. The answer lives in the subconscious mind. More specifically, it lives in the programming of the subconscious mind. The invisible collection of beliefs, habits, and emotional patterns that operate beneath conscious awareness and dictate, almost entirely, the results a person produces in life. And here is the truth that changes everything. That programming can be changed. It is not fixed. It is not destiny. It is simply conditioning, and conditioning can be reconditioned. The tool that makes this possible, the most powerful and accessible tool ever identified for transforming the subconscious mind, is repetition. Not passive repetition, not mindless repetition, but intentional repetition. The deliberate, consistent, emotionally engaged practice of feeding the mind a new idea until it takes root so deeply that the old paradigm no longer has room to survive. In Teasbydale, you will explore 7 dimensions of the repetition method, as taught and lived by Bob Proctor. You will understand why repetition works on a scientific and spiritual level. You will learn how to use it practically. In your daily life, your morning routine, your self-talk, your study habits, and your relationship with your own goals. And you will see, through real examples and powerful principles, why this is not a self-help technique but a law of mind, as reliable and consistent as the law of gravity. Read carefully. Listen with openness. And remember, the part of you that resists this message is the very part that this method is designed to transform. Let's begin. Most people live their entire lives believing they are in control of their decisions. They wake up in the morning, make their choices, pursue their goals, and assume that the thoughts they are consciously aware of are the ones driving their behavior. This assumption, though deeply comfortable, is profoundly incorrect. The human mind operates on 2 distinct levels: the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is the thinking mind, the part that reasons, evaluates, chooses, and imagines. It is the part reading these words right now, forming opinions, and deciding whether to agree or disagree. It is creative, flexible, and awake to the present moment. The subconscious mind is something else entirely. It is not a thinking mind. It does not reason or evaluate. It does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. It simply accepts and acts. It is a repository of every belief, habit, emotional response, and behavioral pattern you have ever formed. Most of them installed before the age of 7, and most of them never consciously chosen. Bob Proctor described the subconscious as a goal-achieving machine. Once a belief is embedded in the subconscious, it will work tirelessly and relentlessly to produce results that match that belief. If you believe on a subconscious level that money is hard to come by, you will unconsciously make decisions that keep money scarce, even while consciously desiring wealth. The subconscious always wins. This is what Proctor called the paradigm, the collection of subconscious programs that control your habitual behavior. The paradigm determines how you spend your time, how you respond to opportunity, how much risk you tolerate, and how worthy you feel of receiving good things. It is the invisible hand guiding your life. The tragedy is that most people spend their lives fighting their results without ever addressing the paradigm. They change their diet, but not their beliefs about their body. They read financial advice, but not their beliefs about money. They set goals, but not their beliefs about what they deserve. And so, the results keep returning to the same set point again and again. Like a thermostat, resetting after the window is opened. The only way to permanently change your results is to permanently change your paradigm. And the only way to change your paradigm, the only method that works at the deep, cellular level of the subconscious mind, is repetition. Specifically, the sustained, emotionally charged repetition of a new idea until it displaces the old one. Think of the subconscious mind as a garden. Whatever seeds are planted there, with enough water and sunlight, will eventually grow. Weeds and flowers both grow from the same soil. The question is not whether the garden will produce. It always will. The question is what you are planting in it. Most of us inherited a garden full of other people's seeds. Our parents' fears, our culture's limitations, our early experiences of rejection and failure. We did not choose those seeds, but we have the power, starting today, to plant new ones, deliberately, repeatedly, and with unwavering intention. This is the foundation of everything that follows. Before you can use the repetition method, you must accept this truth. Your life is a printout of your subconscious programming, and your subconscious programming can be read chapter by chapter, day by day, repetition by repetition. It can be read. When Bob Proctor spoke about repetition, he was not offering motivational advice. He was describing a law, a fundamental principle of how the human mind is structured and how it changes. Understanding why repetition works transforms it from a technique into a conviction, and that conviction makes all the difference in how consistently you apply it. From a neuroscientific perspective, repetition works through a process called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Every thought you think activates a set of neurons. When you think the same thought repeatedly, those neurons fire together and, as the principle states, wire together. The pathway becomes stronger, faster, and more automatic with each repetition. This is why habits are so difficult to break. A habit is not just a behavior. It is a deeply grooved neural pathway that the brain has learned to travel with minimal effort. The brain loves efficiency. Once a pathway is established, it will default to it. This is not weakness, it is biology, and it means that building a new habit is not about willpower. It is about building a new pathway until it becomes the brain's preferred route. Repetition also works through the mechanism of the reticuloactivating system. TR as a filter for the enormous volume of information. TR is a filter for the enormous volume. This is why, after you decide to buy a particular car, you suddenly see that car everywhere. The cars were always there. Your ass simply wasn't programmed to notice them. Repetition programs. The RAS. It literally changes what you perceive as possible and available in your world. From a spiritual perspective, which Proctor always insisted was inseparable from the scientific repetition works, because thought is creative energy. Every thought you think is a vibration. Thr is in 4B. Thr is in CR. Thr is in CR is in Thr is in Vilya. Thr is in VR. The RAS is programmed by what you focus on repeatedly. When you repeatedly think about a goal, an idea, or a belief, the RAS begins to flag relevant opportunities, resources, and information in your environment that it previously filtered out. Repeated thoughts build in intensity and coherence, eventually reaching a frequency that attracts corresponding experiences, people, and circumstances from the field of infinite possibility. Proctor often quoted the ancient principle, as within, so without. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Change the inner world with enough repetition and consistency, and the outer world must follow. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanics of how consciousness interacts with reality. What makes repetition uniquely powerful, beyond any other method of self-development, is that it works on both levels simultaneously. It rewires the brain neurologically, and it elevates the vibrational frequency spiritually. It is the one practice that bridges science and spirit in a single, daily act. The key ingredient that activates repetition's full power is emotion. Emotionless repetition produces slow, shallow results. But when you repeat an idea with genuine feeling, with excitement, gratitude, or a vivid sense of the idea already being real, you flood the subconscious with an emotionally charged signal that it imprints rapidly and deeply. This is why Bob Proctor could read the same book every day for decades and continue to grow. Each reading, with greater emotional depth and understanding, drove the principles deeper into his subconscious. He wasn't rereading, he was re-imprinting, and the compounding effect of that daily practice became the foundation of everything he built. You have goals. You have dreams. You have probably even had moments of clarity where you could see exactly the life you want. Vividly, specifically, with full emotional resonance. And yet, despite that vision, despite your desire, despite your efforts, the results haven't changed the way you hoped. This is not failure. This is the paradigm problem. A paradigm is a multitude of habits fixed in your subconscious mind. It controls your perception of time, your level of self-confidence, your creative capacity, your ability to earn money, and your relationships. It is the operating system running silently in the background while you consciously try to install new software. Until the operating system is updated, the new software will crash every time. The paradigm is why people lose weight and gain it back, why they pay off debt and accumulate it again, why they leave a toxic relationship and find themselves in another one. The external circumstances change, but the internal program reasserts itself, because the paradigm has not been touched. Bob Proctor identified the paradigm as the primary reason why intelligent, motivated, well-intentioned people fail to achieve the results they want. Not lack of knowledge, not lack of desire, not bad luck. The paradigm. And the paradigm, remember, was not consciously chosen. It was absorbed from parents, teachers, peers, religion, culture in early childhood. Before the conscious mind was developed enough to filter it, this means that much of what you currently believe about yourself, about money, about love, about what is possible for you, you did not actually decide. It was handed to you, and you have been living as though it were truth ever since, because the subconscious mind treats its programs as absolute truth, even when those programs are limiting, false, or inherited from people who were themselves limited and afraid. Recognizing this is not an invitation to blame your parents or your past. It is an invitation to take responsibility for the only thing that truly matters: what you put into your mind from this point forward. Because while you didn't choose your original programming, you absolutely have the power to choose your new one. The paradigm resists change. This is important to understand. When you begin using the repetition method, you will often feel resistance, a sense of discomfort, doubt, or even absurdity when repeating ideas that contradict your current self. This resistance is not a sign that the method isn't working. It is a sign that the old paradigm is being challenged. Resistance is evidence of proximity to change. The paradigm also controls your behavior without your awareness. You may consciously decide to take bold action, and then find yourself procrastinating, self-sabotaging, or mysteriously busy with trivial things when the moment arrives to move forward. This is the paradigm at work, keeping you in the familiar, keeping you in the comfortable, keeping you exactly where you have always been. The only force powerful enough to overcome the paradigm is concentrated, consistent, emotionally engaged repetition, applied over time without negotiation. Not sometimes, not when you feel like it. Every day. With conviction, with the understanding that each repetition is an act of reclaiming your mind from a program that was never truly yours. The paradigm is not your enemy. It is simply old code running on old data, and you equipped with the repetition method, or the programmer. You have always been the programmer. You simply weren't given the manual. Consider this your manual. Understanding the repetition method is one thing. Building a practice that actually rewires your subconscious mind is another. The difference between people who read about this work and people whose lives are transformed by it is not intelligence. It is structure. They build a daily architecture of repetition, and they defend it with the same seriousness they would give to eating or breathing. The foundation of any effective repetition practice is a written, specific, present tense statement of your goal or desired new belief. Not, I want to be wealthy. Not someday I will be confident. But a clear, vivid, emotionally resonant declaration. Stated as current reality, I am so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities through multiple sources. This phrasing which Proctor used himself is deliberate. The subconscious does not respond to future tense. It lives in the present. Speak to it in its own language. Write this statement on a card. A physical card, not a phone note. A card you can hold in your hand. There is a tactile, sensory dimension to physical writing that deepens imprinting. Carry the card with you. Read it when you wake up. Read it before meals. Read it before sleep. Read it in the mirror. Read it aloud whenever possible, because hearing your own voice speak an idea engages an additional sensory channel and drives the repetition deeper. Morning is the most powerful time for repetition. In the moments just after waking, the brain is in a theta wave state, a deeply receptive, semi-hypnotic state that is uniquely permeable to new programming. This is the same state children are in for the first several years of life, which is precisely why early childhood is when the paradigm is first formed. Use this window deliberately. Your first conscious act each morning should be to feed your mind the idea you are working to imprint. Evening is the second most powerful time. As you drift toward sleep, the brain returns to a theta state. The thoughts you hold in mind in those final moments before sleep are processed and reinforced throughout the night. This is not poetry. It is documented neurological reality. What you think about as you fall asleep is what your subconscious rehearses while you rest. Repetition is not limited to spoken or written affirmations. It includes what you read, what you listen to, what you watch, and what conversations you participate in. Every input to the mind is a seed. A comprehensive repetition practice involves deliberately curating the information environment, choosing content that reinforces your new paradigm, and reducing exposure to content that reinforces the old one. Audio is one of the most powerful tools in the repetition arsenal. Recording your goal statement in your own voice and playing it repeatedly during exercise, during commuting, during routine tasks, creates a constant stream of subconscious imprinting throughout the day. Your own voice is uniquely authoritative to your subconscious mind. Visualization, when practiced alongside verbal and written repetition, amplifies the effect exponentially. Spend 5 to 10 minutes each day vividly imagining your goal is already achieved, using all 5 senses, experiencing the emotions of that reality as fully as possible. The subconscious cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. Each visualization session is a dress rehearsal that makes the subconscious increasingly comfortable with the new reality you are building. Consistency is more important than intensity. 10 minutes of focused repetition every single day will produce greater transformation than an occasional hour-long session. The subconscious responds to frequency and reliability. It is learning that this new idea is not a passing mood. It is the new normal. Show up for it every day. Track your practice. Keep a simple log, even just a check mark. In a notebook for each day you complete your repetition ritual, the act of tracking creates accountability, momentum, and a visual record of your commitment to yourself. After 30 days, the practice itself becomes a habit, reinforcing your new identity as someone who is actively and deliberately rewriting their mind. Of all the elements that determine whether repetition will transform your subconscious or merely pass through it like water through a sieve, none is more critical than emotion. Emotion is not the decoration on the practice. It is the fuel. Without genuine, deeply felt emotional engagement, repetition is little more than noise. Bob Proctor taught that the subconscious mind is not moved by logic, it is moved by feeling. You can repeat an idea 1,000 times in a flat, detached, going through the motions way, and produce very little change. But repeat it even a handful of times with genuine emotional intensity, with excitement, with conviction, with a felt sense of it being real, and you will feel the shift happening in real time. The reason emotion is so powerful is that it is the language of the subconscious. From the very beginning of your life, your beliefs were formed not just by repetition, but by emotionally significant repetition. The moments that shaped your deepest beliefs about yourself were moments of high emotional charge. Praise or criticism from a parent, humiliation or triumph at school, experiences of love or rejection. Emotion is what transforms a passing thought into a permanent belief. This means that to imprint a new belief, you must bring genuine emotion to the process. And here is where many people struggle, because it feels inauthentic. To feel excited about something that hasn't happened yet, to feel grateful for something not yet received, to feel confident in an identity not yet established. This feeling of inauthenticity is the paradigm resisting. Do not wait for the feeling to come naturally. Generate it deliberately. Gratitude is one of the most powerful emotions for subconscious imprinting. When you approach your repetition practice with a deep, genuine sense of gratitude, not for what you have lost or what you lack, but for the possibility that exists, for the law of mind that makes change possible, for the idea itself and its potential, you create an emotional environment in which new beliefs take root with extraordinary speed. Faith, not religious faith necessarily, but the deep, psychological conviction that what you are doing will work, amplifies the imprinting process further. Proctor often said that faith and fear are the same thing. Both are believing in something you cannot yet see. Choose to believe in the outcome you want. Choose it daily. Choose it before the evidence arrives. That is not delusion. That is creation. One powerful technique for generating emotion during repetition is to vividly recall a time when you felt exactly the emotion you want to associate with your new belief. Before beginning your repetition practice, spend 60 seconds fully reliving a memory of genuine joy, confidence, or abundance. Enter that emotional state fully, then carry it into your repetition. You are essentially borrowing emotion from your past to fuel your future. Physical movement can also unlock emotional intensity. Speaking your goal statement while walking briskly, exercising, or using strong, expansive body language engages the body's nervous system in the imprinting process. Research consistently shows that body state influences mind state. Use your physiology as an ally in the practice of emotional repetition. Love, particularly self-love, which so many people have been conditioned to resist, is perhaps the deepest emotional frequency for subconscious transformation. When you repeat your new belief with an undercurrent of genuine love and acceptance for yourself, when you approach the practice with compassion for the person who is growing, not criticism for the person who has been limited, the subconscious opens in ways that no amount of forceful, self-critical striving can achieve. Ultimately, emotion is the bridge between the conscious idea and the subconscious reality. It is what takes a word and makes it a world. Practice it not as a performance, but as a genuine act of inner communion with the part of yourself that is ready, has always been ready to become more. The repetition method is simple, but simple is not the same as easy. In the gap between understanding it and living it, many people make predictable mistakes that neutralize the practice before it has a chance to produce results. Knowing these mistakes in advance is not pessimism. It is preparation. The first and most common mistake is inconsistency. People begin the practice with enthusiasm, maintain it for a few days, then miss a day, then two, then a week, and eventually abandon it while telling themselves that it didn't work. The subconscious mind is not impressed by enthusiasm. It is impressed by consistency. A practice abandoned before the 30-day threshold rarely breaks through the paradigm. Treat your repetition practice the way you treat brushing your teeth. Non-negotiable, regardless of how you feel. The second mistake is practicing without emotional engagement. Going through the motions. Reading your goal statement in a tired, flat, distracted way produces minimal impact. If you cannot bring genuine emotion to the practice in a given moment, pause. Do something to shift your state first. Move your body. Listen to music that inspires you. Recall a meaningful memory. 10. Practicing. Quality of emotional engagement matters more than duration. The third mistake is focusing on the absence of results. Repetition works beneath the surface long before it produces visible results. The temptation to evaluate the method by the current external reality and to conclude, too early, that nothing is changing is the paradigm's most effective defense mechanism. It will generate doubt. It will whisper that you are foolish for believing this. Do not engage with that voice. Recognize it as the old program protecting itself and return to the practice. The fourth mistake is using language that undermines the imprinting. Phrases like, I am trying to be confident or I hope to attract abundance carry embedded doubt and futurity that the subconscious interprets as evidence of current lack. Always use present tense, declarative, ownership language. I am, I have, I experience. The language must match the reality you are creating, not the reality you are leaving. The fifth mistake is practicing repetition, while simultaneously consuming content that reinforces the old paradigm. An hour of repetition in the morning cannot compete with 8 hours of news, negative social media, and conversations built on scarcity and limitation. The subconscious receives input constantly. Be as deliberate about what you exclude from your mental environment as you are about what you include. The sixth mistake is treating the practice as a transaction, doing it for a set number of days in exchange for a specific result, and stopping when the result doesn't appear on schedule. Transformation is not a transaction. It is a way of living. The repetition method is not a 30-day challenge. It is a lifelong relationship with your own mind. Proctor read the same book for 60 years. Not because he hadn't learned it, because he never stopped deepening it. The seventh mistake is practicing alone without accountability or community. The paradigm is social as well as individual. Surrounding yourself with people who are also doing this work, who share the belief that minds can be changed, that lives can be transformed, that the repetition method is real, creates an environmental frequency that supports your own imprint. Seek that community. Protect your inner circle. The eighth mistake is neglecting the body. The mind and body are not separate systems. Sleep deprivation, poor nutrition, and physical inactivity all create a neurological environment that resists learning and change. A comprehensive commitment to the repetition method includes caring for the biological hardware on which the subconscious runs. Rest, move, nourish yourself, not as self-indulgence, but as infrastructure for transformation. The ninth and final mistake is perfectionism. Waiting for the perfect time to begin. Waiting until the statement is perfectly worded. Waiting until you feel more ready, more settled, more certain. There is no perfect time. There is only now. Begin imperfectly. Begin inconsistently if you must. Begin afraid. Begin with doubt. Begin anyway, because a flawed daily practice will always outperform a perfect one that never starts. The goal of the repetition method is not simply to achieve a goal. The goal is to become the kind of person for whom that goal is natural. The kind of person who attracts wealth, health, love, and fulfillment not through effort and struggle, but through the natural overflow of who they are. This is the ultimate destination of the practice. Not acquisition, but identity. Bob Proctor did not just teach the repetition method. He was Italiano. He had repeated the principles he'd lived by so many thousands of times, over so many decades, that they were no longer ideas he practiced. They were qualities he embodied. He did not need to remind himself to think abundantly. He was an abundant thinker. He did not need to force himself to believe in possibility. He was a living expression of possibility. This is what the method is pointing toward. Identity change is the deepest form of change available to a human being. When your new belief has been repeated so thoroughly that it no longer requires effort to hold, when it becomes automatic, when it is simply how you see yourself. The behavioral changes that follow are effortless and permanent. You don't have to try to be confident. You are confident. You don't have to push yourself to take bold action. Bold action is what you naturally do. The process of moving from practice to identity has a recognizable arc. In the beginning, the new idea feels foreign and even absurd. You repeat it, but it feels like a lie. This is normal. It is the gap between your current identity and your desired identity. Keep going. Over days and weeks, the idea begins to feel less foreign. It starts to feel possible. This is the paradigm beginning to shift. Eventually, and this moment is remarkable when it arrives, you catch yourself thinking or acting in alignment with a new belief spontaneously, without having prompted it. A moment of natural confidence, an instinctive decision that reflects abundance rather than scarcity, a response to a challenge that reflects the new you, not the old one. These moments are evidence that the repetition has taken root at the identity level. Celebrate them. They are the green shoots of your new paradigm. From this point, the practice becomes self-reinforcing. New results in the external world begin to reflect the new internal programming, and those results provide further evidence for the new belief, which deepens the imprinting further. This is the upward spiral that Proctor described, where inner work and outer results compound upon each other, accelerating the transformation in ways that astonish even the person experiencing it. At the identity level, you also become a transmitter of the paradigm you have built. The people around you begin to respond to you differently. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. Relationships of greater depth and resonance find their way to you. This is not coincidence. It is the magnetic effect of a coherent, fully embodied new identity, operating at a higher frequency. Proctor often reminded his students that success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. The repetition method is, at its deepest level, the discipline of becoming. Every day of practice is a day of becoming. Every reading of your goal card, every visualization session, every moment of choosing the new belief over the old doubt, these are acts of becoming the person your goals require. The final stage of living the method is generosity. Sharing it, not out of obligation, but out of the overflow of what has been built inside you. Proctor spent his life teaching because teaching deepened his own learning. Because the act of sharing a principle with another human being is one of the most powerful forms of repetition available. When you articulate something you have internalized, you imprint it at an even deeper level. Teach what you are learning. Share what you are becoming. You are not the person you were when you began reading this. Something has shifted. Perhaps subtly. Perhaps significantly. A new idea has been planted, and if you tend to it, if you return to it daily, with consistency and emotion and unwavering faith in the process, it will grow into something that transforms not just your results, but your entire experience of being alive. That is the promise of the repetition method, not as theory. As law. There is a version of you that already exists, not in the future, but in potential, right now, in this moment, who has already crossed the threshold, who has already broken through the paradigm, who lives from a different frequency, makes decisions from a different identity, and experiences a different world. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is the natural result of a mind that has been deliberately, consistently, and lovingly reprogrammed with the truth of your own infinite capacity. Bob Proctor knew this. He lived it. He proved it possible not just for the gifted or the fortunate, but for a young man who dropped out of school, who had every reason to believe his ceiling was low, and who chose, through the power of one method repeated over a lifetime, to build no ceiling at all. The repetition method is not complicated. It is not expensive. It does not require special talent or a particular background or a certain age. It requires only a decision, a daily, renewed decision to feed your mind the truth of who you are becoming, until that truth becomes more real than the lie of your current limitations. It requires the courage to repeat an idea in the face of doubt, the discipline to practice when you don't feel like it, the patience to trust a process whose results are invisible before they are undeniable. These are not extraordinary capacities. They are available to you right now, exactly as you are. Begin today. Write your goal statement. Read it this morning. Read it tonight. Say it aloud. Feel it. Mean it. Return to it tomorrow and the day after, not because you have to, but because you understand now what it is actually doing inside you, and because the life waiting on the other side of that practice is worth every single repetition.